Did you enjoy that? Yeah. Well, let's welcome them back. A big round of applause, please, for the Robin Hood of Gore, Little John of Wrong, says Jay West, and the Friar Tuck of Very Bad Luck. Well, I'm sure we're going to get a load of questions from you guys as well, so you'll take any questions and answer all of them. But I wanted to start by just...
censor a few.
Yeah, well, yeah, they'll come through me first. The ones that I approve of, I'll ask. It's hard not to look at the finished film here and kind of think about whether or not you're going to have to cut it when you submit it to the BBFC. What do you think you're going to lose? And was there anything that you wish you'd added in or couldn't put in?
Well, basically, the clips from New York Ripple, we've been told, will probably have to be cut. So we're just going to censor something as it is, and then
we're going to keep it. We're going to keep it in.
Cut by the BBFC in 2014. So
if they do cut it,
yeah,
this is in context as well. We think so.
They might not cut it. You just don't know.
I mean, well, is there a worry? Is there ever a point as well? I guess you're an accomplished film director as well of film dramas, of horror films. Is there a sort of an element now of self-censorship that people feel that they have to exercise when they look at the kind of certificates, even today, that are aiming for certification in audiences?
Yeah, I think a lot of filmmakers are pressured, mostly by the finances and the producers actually, to deliver films not for adults anymore. They always want you to give it as a PG-13 or a 15. They don't want an 18 film. So I think everything's becoming homogenised in a way which isn't great if you want something a bit more, interesting at a higher level, higher category.
Do you find that as well? I mean, even in researching this, are you there thinking, there's no point cutting that into it?
I don't think so, no, because most of the stuff we've used is from trailers anyway and stuff like that, and there's not really anything too explicit in the trailers, so we just, we didn't want to really push the boundaries too much, because it's a documentary, and in the grounds of a documentary for the BBFC, when we originally made it, they had these different guidelines whereby you couldn't put anything too explicit in, which recently has changed, and they're changing again in a couple of months' time and cutting down on even that. So it's getting really bad.
I mean, that's a really relevant question, isn't it, as well, at the moment? Is everyone actually getting quite anxious about these new BBFC guidelines? I guess a lot of distributors are worried about content on Blu-rays and DVDs and whether those extras need to be resubmitted and will cost money, and whether or not content, again, is going to start being banned or censored.
Well, this is what happened when we showed it in Glasgow. David Hyman, who was actually a friend of ours, funny enough, he was a BBFC examiner, he said, you're going to have to sort of submit a lot of this stuff to the BBFC now. And we couldn't believe it, because in the first box we didn't have to, because it came under the exemption rules. But with this set, he said, because you've got violent material in there, you now have to classify it. So the more I looked into it, the more angry I got, and I was really pissed off, and I put a post on Facebook about it, and then it went viral, more or less. And Movie Mail did a piece on it, and Huffington posted something, and then we got a phone call from the BBFC, didn't we? And we were asked to go in and talk to them about it, because they don't like bad press, basically. So they sat us down and had a chat with us, and then last week we called a meeting, all the labels, and we had a meet up with the BBA, and we're going to see how it goes, basically, because the deal it's been stamped in Brussels, so there's not a lot we can do now, it's been passed. You think funny being passed in Brussels, being in the UK.
Yeah, but one of the things which was strange about your question about certain images being censored, what's strange is because obviously this is retrospective, this is about what happened back in the past. There's loads of images in this film which were banned, and if this was released in the 80s, you wouldn't be allowed to see it. So this is.
This would be completely.
Yeah, but what's weird is how standards change. The idea that something from Friday the 13th Part 5 or whatever is actually offensive is a ridiculous thing, and I think this is, in some ways things have got better on that level, but I do think that censorship is changing. It's almost more like adult content is being eroded in the sense of films for over 18s in terms of intelligent films.
That's the kind of sort of homogenisation. That's the kind of the blandness of mainstream genre fare. The more successful it is, the more of a monster it becomes. But do you find the same thing? I mean, the similar thing with the BBFC, when it changes its rules, can be sudden. What offended or corrupted last year doesn't next year.
I think part of the problem with the BBFC is that a lot of the rules are quite vague. The new rules on exemption are really vague. One of the rules I think is stuff that people might find offensive for any reason. But well, what could that be? Because everybody's offended by something. So how can you decide what is or isn't exempt? It's so vague and so actually made up. So I think, the BBFC rules are inconsistent, and they change it, on whims. They change it to fit with press campaigns. They change it to fit with so-called studies which are not real studies whatsoever. Getting a few people in the room and asking them loaded questions, things like that.
Well, the survey, they did a recent survey, didn't they, that seemed to galvanise quite a lot of criticism, internet criticism, where people were terrified that this survey was going to have consequences. They were asking, I don't know what the range of people they were interviewing, that they were surveying, but it seemed that they were selecting.
And what they were doing was really bad, because if people came back with the wrong answers, they were basically taking them away and interrogating them and saying, why do you think this? Why do you think this? Why do you think this film is okay? And asking them again and again and again until they basically changed their minds and said, oh, well, actually, we probably were wrong, that is a bit dodgy after all, so we should be banned.
And Jake, is one of the really strong points that's made throughout the film, that it is a kind of warning from history that this could happen again, that people are always shouting, won't someone think of the children?
Yeah, well, I think it's just the same old, you just hear the same old rhetoric over and over again, and I think once you recognise it, you begin to realise that this has been done before, so you've got to sort of stop that thinking. So one of the advantages we have now, I think, with social media and stuff, which has replaced the sort of fanzine scene that we saw grow up in the 80s and 90s, is that people do communicate with each other a lot better now. So it's a lot harder for authority to get away with stuff, because in the past they had the only voice. The voice of the media was the authoritative voice. Anyone outside that was basically silenced or made to be because weirdos or whatever. So I do think things have improved on that level where we are now.
Well, I think it is actually still, it is actually happening right now. I mean, if you look at the way they talk about, the internet filtering, stuff like that, they're using exactly the same arguments. The same things about research that we had in the 80s about video nasties. It's the same thing, that they're saying, the same apocryphal stories about, oh, somebody's seen this and they've done that. So, yeah, it's still going on. It's going on right now.
Well, do you think the internet has actually brought people together, or actually become a little bit more, maybe, a little bit more sort of...
Well, I think it's, the reason they're upset about the internet is because it's spur of technology. I mean, that's why they went for video, because video is new. Now the internet is, it's not new, but it's new-ish. So, video, nobody's going to, talk about banning video anymore, because video is old. It's, that's not how people watch films. So, now it's the internet. The next thing will be, whatever comes along after the internet that frightens people.
And of course, one of the ironies is that the kind of oppressed fans create a really brilliant sort of subculture and start to really network and talk to each other. That's enormously missed in some ways, I guess. Do you think that it's still around? Do you still feel that there's a possibility for it?
Well, I think, part of probably the reason a lot of people in this room is because they, at some level, are fans of, horror films or cult films or whatever. So I do think that, certainly in genre, there is like a sort of much more obsessive sort of liking of the films, which has always brought people together. And like I say, people of my generation are filmmakers or writers, or they're involved in different things. So I think it created the culture we have now, because the people that grew up on that are actually making films and writing stuff now. So I think that that's one of the interesting things about where we're heading. It's just like, because of the sort of crass over-commercialisation of everything, you're just getting a lot of stuff which, you're not seeing much kind of sort of interesting, kind of really subversive material so much, though, because people are becoming a bit less sort of revolutionary in their own thinking, I find.
Well, because we've got the fans in the audience as well, let's see if anyone here has got any questions. No? Oh.
Yep. First, I just want to say thanks for bringing that up and showing it here, because it's great to see it on the big screen. The Graham Wright footage in this, did you shoot that at the same time for the first documentary? He never let you interview him again, did he?
No, yeah, we shot it the first time we met him. We shot everything, and this was just left over from that, and we didn't leave it out on purpose, but it just didn't seem to fit in the first documentary. But when we did this, we thought, oh, this is perfect.
Well, what happened is the interviews we did originally were like very long and extensive, and there's no way that Graham Wright would ever let us talk to him again after the first one. But what happened is as I was editing the first documentary, is that originally I thought, oh well, I'll take in the video recordings act and go beyond it. But the length of the documentary got to a point where it had a natural end at the actual original video Nasty Scare, and the second thing became, this is a longer documentary, so it wasn't going to work in the first one, and also we needed to get a lot more material to really give it any depth. So the first one had its end, so this was why the inspiration for this was actually because we felt there was actually some more story to tell. So it was actually just trying to get the right research done, which took nearly 2 years to get that done.
Well, hats off to you as well. The research in this is fantastic, and the sources and the clips are amazing. I mean, I'm assuming now that you know, just getting them out there and getting them showed as a kind of fair use thing, and you know, it's just a tremendous achievement in terms of research.
It took a lot of time tracking stuff down and trying to find the right thing someone says, and you know, I mean, it's Jake really who put it all together. He had, how many hours did you have?
I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff, so it was a monumental torture.
Really?
Probably the most unenjoyable piece of editing I've ever done.
The original cut, this was 3 hours, wasn't it?
The first cut was over 3 hours, and you know, it was ridiculous. And you wouldn't want to see it because it just wasn't. It was very much more in depth, because you can keep going into detail on these things, but there has to be a point where you make a point, and then if you're interested in the subject, you're going to look into it more yourself. So it's always the balance of trying to keep something entertaining and informative with this kind of documentary, but also I didn't ever want to use any voiceover to explain anything. It was all about people's own feelings of what they lived through and their stories, which were important to me.
Have you got any more questions from the audience?
Yeah, just first thing. One thing, a sort of fantastic documentary, good follow-up to the first. And the second question is, I recognise most of the sources, especially the footage from that wonderful, really strange bear pit we used to have in regional central weekend. But this is just a perverse thing for me. Where the bloody hell did you find that footage of Mary Whitehouse with the Rambo look?
We spent a lot of time, well, I spent a lot of time trawling like the archives of the studios, and they've got a lot of stuff that you wouldn't believe. It's just there, and I just couldn't believe I hadn't seen it myself before.
What's weird though is that when you're looking for stuff, it's not actually labelled up properly a lot of the time. So if you do a search for Mary Whitehouse, some of that stuff doesn't come up because it's been.
You've got to try and think of really clever ways to find stuff. It's really, you've got to put in different search terms. It just gets ridiculous what you're typing in, and then suddenly something will pop up just like fucking hell. Look at that!
It's that kind of thing.
It's hilarious, isn't it? Yeah.
Have you got any more questions? Yeah.
It was interesting that your documentary was really, to a certain extent, there's a kind of tilting operation going on between the filmmakers and the audiences, and you had filmmakers who went on to make films like yourself, but you didn't talk to any filmmakers who made these movies, which are obviously deliberately designed to provoke and upset. I mean, do you think there's a place for a discussion of? I mean, the obvious one is the snuff myth. The snuff myth comes from an irresponsible attempt to promote a really shitty film. Do you think there's any responsibility on the part of the filmmakers, the publicists, for generating this kind of thing? Just playing devil's advocate, really.
It's a fair question. I think we covered Snuff, the film you're talking about, in the first documentary, and we do talk again about Snuff, and we've got that brilliant clip of that guy who looks like a Numanoid saying, you know, in the video shop that we don't sell Snuff videos, which is brilliant. But it's weird because I think the thing is, the video nasty, the actual films themselves, were such a random selection of films, and a lot of them were foreign films from different countries. There was no unified view of what these filmmakers were trying to do, other than what was considered offensive in this country wasn't considered offensive in their countries. So I don't think that individually, that's what, in the box set, I mean, we go through each film and talk about what upset people in the introductions, and similar to this is going to be released as on the volume 2, which we're looking at the section 3 list, which I'll let Marc explain to you. But it's a good question, but it would be really difficult to track everyone down because a lot of people aren't alive.
Yeah, of course.
Well, this box set actually, when we were doing the first box set, we went to the BBFC's offices, and they let us go through some of their files, and we found a whole load of stuff from the Scene Publications Squad of DPP, and we found loads of lists, and in among one of the piles was a list marked section 3, and I thought, well, what the fuck's that? And it was another 82 titles, and I said, what's this? And they said, it says titles that were liable for forfeiture, so the coppers could walk in and take them off the shelves, but they wouldn't be prosecuted for having them in their shops. But that was 82 titles with things like The Thing, Friday the 13th 1 and 2, Night of the Living Dead, Stuff like that, you know, just crazy offbeat films that they
Just
could just
opportunities
walk in and
to
take
sort
off
of-
the shelf.
Just to harass video shop owners.
So it wasn't something we originally planned. We thought the first box set was definitive at that time, but then during the end of it, we thought, oh, bloody hell, we've got to do another one now. So then we started tracking down all the trailers and doing more interviews, and then we did this documentary, which was originally going to come up to date, wasn't it? It was originally going to go up to like the human centipede stuff and things like Grotesque and other things that have been refused by the BBFC.
Yeah, but it just felt that the story, you know, it was running long anyway, and also once you got to 1999, you know, the BBFC did change a lot and censorship got better in this country. So really there wasn't much drama left in the story, and to just cut forward like 12 or 13 years just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
David, do you agree with that, or do you think filmmakers have got a responsibility to something? And has the BBFC, this is a supplemental question to that one there, has the BBFC lost its power? I mean, it's still banning films entirely, isn't it? So prohibiting them.
I don't think filmmakers or distributors are really responsible, because, you know, they're selling films. You know, they've got to make their films look sensational, exciting, whatever it's going to take. You know, so. And if we talk about snuff in particular, and that's, you know, there's probably an entire documentary in the whole snuff mythology.
That wasn't even made. It wasn't even made as that film to start off.
No.
It was another film, and then the marketing people changed it and shot a new ending. So
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
trying to sell a shit film to start.
And, you know, all the films that have been talked about, snuff movies, you know, you can always prove what they were. You know, it's very mythological. As for the BBFC, well, you know, yeah, they've lost that power in the sense that, you know, they can ban a film now. You can download it. It's a lot easier to see stuff.
When they ban something, it just makes people want to see it more, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, of
it just
course.
draws it to everybody's attention.
But, you know, that's what happened with the original video
Exactly,
Nasties, isn't it? You know?
It's one of the good things about the internet.
But saying that, when we were with the BBFC, they're talking about having more regulatory powers over the internet. I don't know how the hell they're going to do that, but I said, well, you know, these new laws that are coming in to protect children from music videos and like Miley Cyrus and stuff like that, it's just not going to work. They watch it on YouTube and he goes, wait and see what we're about to do. So that was a bit worrying, really. I don't know how the hell they're going to control it, but
Especially if he points at you like, wait and see.
he hinted that they're up to something to have some sort of control.
Blimey, that's made me genuinely
Yeah,
not
this is why in the first one, it mentions the internet and the fact that that's coming.
Watch out, everyone like me.
Thanks. My question's a bit more boring, but it's about the distribution of this. Don't fall asleep yet, please. It's about the distribution of this film beyond the United Kingdom. Because I guess the question is there interest for the video nasties beyond the UK, or is it like just a parochial thing that only people...
Well, originally when we made the first one, we kind of thought it was very UK-centric and was surprised to find that we got a lot of requests from foreign festivals. We went across Europe to Sweden.
We went to Sweden and Belgium and that, and in fact they watched the first one and thought it was a mockumentary. They said, no, this shit really did happen in Britain.
And Americans as well find it incredible. They always don't understand the term video. What's a video nasty? And then you tell them the films, and they go, but that's just a normal film, we've seen that.
On
It's
TV.
like, if they don't get, you know, so there was this, but when they watch it, they can't believe what happened, and it just play a bit more like a comedy to those people. So we've subsequently got picked up in the States by Severin.
Yeah, the first box set is out in Australia and coming out in the States soon. And probably the second one will as well, I imagine.
Yeah, so I think it's because ultimately the history of what happened is quite bizarre, and I don't necessarily think you have to live in Britain to find that interesting. So, I mean, you're a researcher yourself, so you know you kind of know that a good story is always going to get passed on. So it's taken time, but we're always surprised that people do seem to want to see it elsewhere.
There's also a big resurgence in the interest of the VHS era and stuff like that, and collectors and nostalgia and hipsters and stuff like that. They're all really into it now, so it seems to be spreading its interest. It goes beyond censorship with them, doesn't it?
Yeah. But then when the next generation grow up, everyone won't give a shit about it. You know?
Can I just say something in response to that, if that's all right? I just saw Just Your Tracking recently, that documentary about American VHS collectors, and they talk about selling tapes for lots of money. But the figures that they quote aren't anything in comparison to what the original pre-cert VHS material goes for in the UK. So I just think that's
well, Marc sold the tape without a cover for how much?
About 500 quid for an old But
So,
tapes do go for lots. Some people pay thousands for old videotapes, you know. they're like seen as first edition videos of like books. You know, people just want the original. They don't want the DVD or the Blu-ray. They'd rather have an old VHS or Betamax.
But we do
the artwork mainly.
But we do get a feeling that that market is very much generated by people who have this great nostalgia factor, who all of a sudden have money and start getting a bit stupid because they really think, oh my God, I've got to pay 900 quid for a tape. So I think any market will have its bubble, and the VHSs themselves won't even last, so it's a magnetic tape. So
they've lasted 30 years so far. Well,
maybe that's the new house prices.
Question down here.
Yes, actually, I can vouch for what you said earlier about a resurgence of an interest in VHS. I come from America. I'm from California.
Welcome to England.
Thank you. And yes, I do agree, but it's not as popular, I should say, as say a record, records or a record player. Which kind of leads me to the next question. Do you think that the VHS, the VCR, could be the next record player, like the next trend in maybe 10, 20 years?
There are people collecting video players and stuff like that. There are people who was always, I know loads of people who just got a VHS room or something just for nostalgia.
And I think David's more of a Laserdisc man. Video disc, even more. Bloody
the only thing on your question, like the one thing about vinyl is actually the recording is actually of good quality if it's not scratched. The only problem with VHS is the resolution is actually shit, and normally the mastering is off and it's reframed wrong. So from that point of view, if you actually like the films, I don't think it's a good experience from the point of view. But there are a lot of people who are obsessed by VHS, and there's probably some in this room, so I don't want to offend them.
I was going to say, David as well is looking for someone to help him get his video disc player interface with his telly.
Yeah, well, I've got 20 discs.
Sure, anyone can see David after. Question over here.
Yeah, the VPC element. I worked in the video shop for 3 years and I never put two and two together as to why the Redemption video covers were always shite.
I don't think that was anything to do with censorship, to be honest.
Direction, wasn't it? I worked there and I didn't like them either.
I mean, if you look at today's DVD covers and posters, and genuinely, I mean, I'm autistic. I've worked with men before, and they're just awful. They're always awful, and I just think, is that a consequence of the censorship? They no longer want to take that risk. They no longer want to use things that are actually important visually, that matter in terms of continuity within elements of cultural history.
Well, I think that's
just use celebrities.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think that the creativity those covers were creative and they were interesting artworks in themselves, and they were selling the idea of the film and something. In fact, they probably oversold the films because you were normally disappointed because the cover promised something that you didn't get. But that was because the creative impulse was actually there. But I think in all, most movie posters these days all they're selling is the cast. It's just the stars. That's what's important, and that goes back to that homogenization of things. And that is a shame because I think you've lost the creativity. And I think that poster art used to be an art, but these days it's not. It's really like a group photograph.
That Scream, that was one of the earlier ones, wasn't it? That sickening Scream poster. Yeah.
But I think that's why you've got companies like Arrow, doing their new sleeves and Second Sight and things like that. They're trying to revive that interest.
And it's just occasionally you see a little breakthrough, and you hope it becomes a trend. Like the Waking Fright poster was very lovely.
What was the one we saw downstairs earlier?
The Strange Colour of Everybody's Tears. Yes, it's hopefully. Do you know what I mean? It does make you think there's just little chinks, aren't there, of light coming through.
Nice
maybe good design will come back, and that'll help people make choices about what films they want to see.
In a lot of respects, the way like Netflix, it's very limitations in terms of your options. You no longer walk into a video shop. I'm sure a lot of people who are here, they love that experience. You went into a video shop, you store, you just kind of that atmosphere was why you went there in the first place. And it's something that seems to be very lost.
Yeah, I agree.
A question just over here. You still got the question? Okay, over here.
Going back to the tape trading period of it.
I deny it all.
When you were digging through classified ads and sending lots of money off in an envelope with a will and a prayer and everything. Individually, what was the holy grail you were looking for Did you get it, and what did you think?
I don't know, I can remember when I used to go over to Amsterdam. I remember the most I ever paid for the video was Beneath the Valley of the Ultra Vixens. It was in a pawn shop in Amsterdam. It was £40, and I thought, I can't pay that. But I remember getting it back, and within a few weeks I'd made the money back on it just by copying it for people.
Well, I think, you know, I don't know about Holy Grail, I don't know specifically. Speaking of, you know, those video shops in Amsterdam, I remember like digging through this huge pile of VHS tapes, trying to pull this stuff out of the bottom of it because we like some old 70s film. The guy standing at the counter looking at me, and they say, he's like, oh, you know, some good porn at the top, you know. It's like, no, I actually want this film, this film. And he just obviously thought I was insane.
The weird thing is, you spent so long looking for a certain title that when you had it, you just then moved on to whatever the next one was. So I don't know if you valued it in that way, because after a while, you still say you get quite disappointed. Like you'd see a film, and it was actually like Frozen Scream or something. It was fucking terrible. So that sort of put you off. You sort of dampen your excitement after that 5-year search. So I think it was when you started seeing films that you really liked, when you saw a good film, you know, like say something like a Dario Argento movie, and you were being introduced to work that then led you on to other works, which was more exciting for me as a filmmaker.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wondered what films disturbed you the most.
You all are all very disturbed.
I think I'm immune to it all now.
What about First Transmission, which is in David's book?
Yeah, First Transmission's pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
When I first started watching Video Nasties, it was the one that freaked me out was Cannibal Holocaust, because, you know, it just took me by surprise. And it took me a few years to get into that. Yeah, stuff like First Transmission.
Animal stuff really pisses me off.
SPK's Despair and their post-mortem video that they put out as well. All that kind of stuff. You know, that's the hard stuff. That's the difficult stuff. So not really films. They're just like experimental things.
It's like all the stuff we can read about in sheer film.
What disturbed you most? Back room has been recreated upstairs.
What disturbed you most?
I don't think about that.
It's weird because, I don't know, films sort of change their effect on you as you watch them. I was more disturbed by that clip of that senator who shot himself in the head, which was a real thing. Which
American Gulag.
American Gulag, which used to be on people, used to dub that onto tape. So, how many people have seen that? Yeah. But I find that really disturbing because it's real. I mean, it's interesting because it's real, but it also is fucking real.
Well, that's the thing, you know, there's a lot of that stuff, a lot of that Mondo stuff was quite extreme, you know, and I don't know why it is, you know, getting older and closer to death or something that I can't bring myself to watch all that, you know, all that stuff that's out there on, you know, all the live leak clips, all the beheadings and things like that. Whereas, you know, I guess, you know, when I was in my 20s, I probably would have sat through that kind of thing. But now it's like, you know, I don't really need to see that anymore.
You know, one of the questions I was going to ask you was where you hid your nasties. And then I realised that there's no point asking Dave. I
hid them in the police station.
I used to hide mine under the bath, and I remember one time I was really worried if I took them over to a girlfriend's house, which turned out to be a really bad idea because we ended up splitting up and she ended up smashing them up with a hammer. I lost loads of really good tapes.
Oh no, you should have been nicer.
I should have done. With a flailing round.
So, where did you still hide them there?
No, I don't hide them still. I can't find some if they lend it to people. I don't know. I didn't actually really bother hiding them. Actually, I just most of the stuff I had was always like dupes. They were just cheap dubs and stuff. They were really bad copies with handwritten labels. So, you know, I lived out in Kent at that point. So I didn't really know anyone who got busted until I came up to London.
Well, listen, I don't mean to wrap things up so abruptly. I'm sure everybody's still got loads of questions, and all
you
three of you,
you can answer a good question.
Yeah, all three of you are going to be upstairs in the Mez Lounge. So if you want to join us, get a drink, come and have a beer with us, or a glass of wine, and buy your copy of Sheer Filth from the fantastic Fan Press, which really is, I think, a great archive of everything that was happening in the 80s and 90s. It really
almost everything
that was happening to Dave Flint. So please come and get a copy of the book and carry on talking about censorship and video nasties. But a massive thank you to David Flint, to Jake West, to Marc Morris. Thank you very much.